I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it's sink or swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it's sink or swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Want to put it all together. This is big things. Doing big things. Chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real. This life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream. All the dudes yell. This is just what I do, and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, but homie, keep going. You know the saying, you can reap what you sow in. So I don't chase girls. I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Robbie 2016. Like a phone to die, put me in charge. I'm a general from the front, I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, powered by Celsius Beverage. This is your first time tuning in. You catch all these amazing episodes up on our website, shrimptankpodcast.com. We, of course, feature the best and brightest entrepreneurs from South Florida, finding the do's and don'ts of running and operating a business. I'm joined by my co-host today, Dr. Roland Kidwell. Before we get into today's guests today, Roland, what is happening at FAU?
Well, we just finished the business pitch competition. We were both there, Shana and I, and we had student entrepreneurs pitching. We had Spanish language entrepreneurs pitching. We had youth, 6th and 7th graders pitching. I was a judge of that one. That was quite interesting. It's amazing the talent coming out of the high school, junior high school here. And we had veterans program pitching as well. So it was quite a day, quite a morning. And then tomorrow evening, the winners will be announced over Tech Runway. So that's the big event that's happening as we speak.
Now, do a lot of the people pitch just to get to know some other investors? Do they pitch to receive funding? Kind of explain in more detail.
There are prizes. There are various prizes for the winners of the competition, but they also can get a place in the Tech Runway to develop their business, the incubator accelerator here at FAU. Others come from the community. They might identify a bright entrepreneur and invest in that. And then some of these folks, particularly some of the veterans, are already started their businesses, and they're trying to raise capital as part of that process. And we have a lot of people who participate in the veterans program who've been very successful. We're judging in that program. And I actually missed the student group, so Shana can fill us in on that. She was the one of the judges in that. So a variety of different reasons, but one of the things is to kind of show people that you're interested in entrepreneurship and you want to start a business and you have that desire and that drive and that passion. Whether that turns out to be the business that you start, the one you pitch today, it may not be, but the thing is, you're getting some practice and getting some exposure.
Hey, you got to start somewhere. Practice. If you don't get in front of rooms and just give it your all, you're never going to succeed, right? Most people that I've met that have done these pitch competitions think that that's their business. They're going to go big. It's going to be the next unicorn. But what ends up happening is they end up learning so much from speaking in front of that audience, and they shift gears. They meet the right people, and all of a sudden they realize maybe the product that they were designing doesn't have a big enough addressable market. They shift gears and invent something. And we saw that with brands like Chipmunk, obviously one of the most famous ones that came out of, the College of Business, then over the Tech Runway, and then raised a lot of capital. And I'm not even sure if he is still running it or he has exited. I'm still not, fully certain behind the scenes what is happening there, but it's amazing to see the journeys of these entrepreneurs. Let's get into our guest today. Today, we have the executive director of 1909, Shana, in the studio. And I guess before we get into what 1909 is, because you were at FAU the entire morning, can you share with us just your experience so far with the different pitches and just one that stuck out in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was so fun to be a judge. I think, it's really always inspiring to hear, especially just, young people. There's like almost this freedom from limitation of fear and ideas and what's possible. And so that was really inspiring to be a part of this morning. It's like always such a good reminder of just like thinking totally outside the box and putting new ideas out there, which is very cool. I mean, I'm pregnant, so there was a very cool like baby crib, new functional way to put wood together that I heard about today that comes from
That's
like
cool.
ancient Chinese wood building, which was very interesting, and they're like bringing it back
I bet you didn't
into
see
the
that coming,
furniture
right?
setting. So that was super interesting. We had some really cool stuff in the dental field. We had some really cool stuff about cleaning up our waterways, which is obviously really critical in Florida. There was a lot of exciting ideas that I was very into today.
Yeah, I see that quite often when you go to these pitch competitions. You go in thinking, one thing with your expectations, and then all of a sudden, like speaker after speaker go up, and it's just like amazing to see their passion behind their projects and just different inventions. And I think often we think of just what we see on Shark Tank, right? But that's so edited down, right?
Yeah.
They take the best clips at certain moments, but in the real world, like people get nervous up there, right? They're shaking a little bit, then they get in their groove, and you could really get a sense for their passion, how much they believe in these products and why they need to get to the market. So it's of course very exciting.
Yeah.
And you run 1909, right? So 1909, you see a lot of that as well. So why don't you tell our audience what 1909 is all about?
Awesome. Yeah. So 1909, we're named after the year Palm Beach County is founded. So very focused here in Palm Beach County on entrepreneurs, small businesses, startups, and really providing them the resources and support they need to not only start a business, but really grow a sustainable business. That's been really, really important to us, is making sure we have an environment where people can bring new ideas to life, validate them, right? Understand if there's a market, understand what that revenue model would look like, how do they actually bring it to market, and then building teams alongside, which is like a really critical phase of entrepreneurship that we don't always see a lot of, and we don't talk about as much in some of these early stage programs. Is like, how do you get to a leadership phase? How do you get to a scale phase? And how do you do that well? And so yeah, we've been doing that for about 6 years now up in West Palm Beach, and serve founders all over Palm Beach County.
And how many different entrepreneurs are housed in that location?
So we generally have about 200 members that we serve each month. And some of those founders stay with us for, years at a time. Some come in, they'll go through a program. We'll work on, hey, is this a real business? Is this a hobby? What happens? And, we kind of help people move through that process more quickly, which can be a really good thing.
And what are the cost levels, right? Let's say I want my own private office, or maybe I just want to pop my head in once in a while.
Yep.
Tell us the structure behind it.
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's really important that people know you have to apply in. So you have to be accepted. You have to apply in as, a founder, business owner, creative, to be a part of our membership and space. That's pretty critical. And then once you do that and get accepted, people kind of choose the membership level they want, which is, supported by space. So some people can have just open space where they're popping up a laptop. That starts at $75 a month. And then people can grow their teams. So we have teams up to 4 or 5 people that have offices for like $1,500 a month. We're currently moving into a new space because our offices have been on a wait list for about 2 years. So when we have people that have teams that don't fit in our space, so we're going to be moving to double the size square footage, hopefully by the end of this year. And we'll fit teams up to 10.
It's a great problem to have. Roland, what is
Yeah.
your thoughts behind these type of environments, right? You spent your whole career around entrepreneurship, and I'm sure when you see, these brick and mortar type spaces, a lot comes to mind. What are your thoughts?
Sure. I think one of the things is how much people learn from each other, how they can interact, and you find some synergies that way. You also find some excitement and passion, and can play off other people, that there's a success over here with something. Somebody's been trying to get a customer. Somebody's been trying to put something out, and they're successful. And that inspires you, I think, as another person in the space or as a member. But also the networking is very, very important. And you have that opportunity to network with a variety of people, not only who are in there with you, but people who have graduated, so to speak, or people who are just offering themselves as resources. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who want to give back, and there are a lot of those are involved in this and trying to help others get to the place where they are. So that's a lot of it, I think.
Shana, is there data on this? Yeah, that has come out after COVID, right? Or during COVID, of everyone decided to work from home, do Zoom, and realize, wait, I don't have to go to an office 9 to 5, deal with the traffic to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, New York City, Los Angeles, right? And then all of a sudden you start to see the shift, right? Where it said, enough is enough. People are coming back to the office because a lot of things that Roland has said, right? And then you see surveys, but they're kind of all over the map. Like one survey says, working from home is actually best. Then the next survey is like working in the office is best. Is there's some strong data that you've seen?
I think it's interesting. I really do think it depends on the industry and business and type of work people are doing. To be honest, I really don't think there's across the board like it works or it doesn't. I would say, and we've seen this since pre-COVID, and kind of to Roland's point, is that bringing people together in one space where, they're not doing the same thing, but they're working towards big goals. And, they're working on tough things, and being around others in that environment absolutely makes a difference. There's lots of studies that show accelerators, incubators, organizations like, ours and Tech Runway, putting people together in that type of environment absolutely increases their chances of success because they're not doing it alone, right? They have somebody next to them that could maybe answer a question or can just tell them like, hey, sometimes we have bad days. And sometimes we don't close clients. And a lot of times investors say no. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong. Or, hey, by the way, have you tried it this way? It might help you move a little bit faster. There's a huge difference that can make.
So how does it work in terms of people in the facility interacting with staff? I mean, are they always available to answer a question, or is it usually the entrepreneurs talking to each other? What's that atmosphere like?
So it's usually both. I would say a lot of times we try to create situations where there's peer-to-peer learning. So as staff, right, it's our job to help create and encourage an environment where the right people are sitting next to each other, having conversations together, making those connections where, individuals can get help within our space. If people are in a specific program with us, like let's say they're in our 6-month accelerator, they'll have a lot more one-on-one time, not only with the facilitators of that program, but with our mentors, where they'll have designated time to sit down and talk through questions. But I would say the peer-to-peer learning is absolutely incredible. I mean, it's actually interesting to see what will happen at the lunchroom table, where, we've had a founder saying, hey, I'm teeing my business up for acquisition and this is happening. And I don't know if this is a good deal. I don't even know how to look at these terms. And someone else who's happened to be through that, is sitting there too, just happenstance. And it's like, hey, let me help you. Let me introduce you, to the investment banking company we use to go through the process. And it's like, that's life-changing. Just that conversation. So sometimes, it's just a serendipity of having the right people in the right space together.
Can you go into more detail about the accelerator that you run and also the mentors? There's a lot of accelerators in South Florida, like FE Tech Runway, the Levan Center of Innovation. There's obviously a lot popping up in Miami these days as more and more entrepreneurs come down here. So what makes yours unique? And also, how do you get in? And tell us kind of, what the process is like while you're in it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our accelerator, which is a 6-month program, application-based, and it's industry agnostic. So I do think that's somewhat unique. I mean, I do think other accelerators are serving companies that maybe aren't tech, but are maybe tech enabled. Yeah. We really do serve people that are starting nonprofits. Maybe, it's a service-based company, a creative-based company, and, the next AI company. So we're really open. We're really looking for people at a specific stage where, they're early, but they have enough to try and see what we can build and what we can validate. So that's a big piece of what we look for. And then we look again for what we call mindful innovation. So we're looking for people that have some sort of goal to, doesn't have to be a nonprofit or social enterprise, but we want to see that people are looking to better, solve real problems, better their community.
Do they get free space? Kind of explain like the other side.
So they get the space. They'll get mentorship, all the programming outside of the accelerator we offer. So we have, multiple sessions they can be a part of a week, events they can be a part of, kind of everything we do within 1909, they'll get access to, and then they get the classes, the mentorship, and the whole accelerator program.
Is there funding at all at the end? Like Y Combinator? Almost every company looks at a Y Combinator.
Right.
$500,000 or more, for example.
Yeah, no, I wish
not
we had
many accelerators have that.
$500,000 to give out. There's not. So what we actually do is we have a fun event called Collab Weekend. So what happens is throughout the program, the founders that have been accepted into the accelerator earn points throughout the program. So they can earn points for either showing up for class, meeting with their mentors, and then the peers in the program give them points as well.
I
If
like
they
that.
helped one another, if they were inspiring, if they gave a good pitch, whatever it is. And so they accumulate points throughout the program. At the end of the program, the top 5 businesses who have the top amount of points, they actually get assigned a collab team, which means we have volunteers come out from all over the community. They're experts in certain things, whether it's app development or web development or photography or videography, and they work on their business for a weekend in a competition, like a hackathon. And so usually they get like $15,000 to $20,000 worth of work completed
Nice.
in that weekend. So, there's definitely a tangible and value at the end, but it's not like a check.
And how many companies approximately get every 6 months?
Usually it's between 10 and 20. This year we just selected our cohort and there's 16 companies.
And then how many of these are actually in the on site that have space? All of them or some of them? Or?
All of them usually during the program. I mean, we do have companies that just being in the space isn't necessarily the right fit. Like last program, we had a transportation company that was doing, electric trolleys. So they're out every day. They weren't necessarily working behind a computer every day, but I would say the majority who are in the program are in the space regularly, kind of working out of there. And some of them are working out and are members of ours before the program. And then most of them will stay.
And are these people the ones paying for the desk or for the room, that sort of thing? Is that how that works, or is it something separate?
It is something separate. Again, generally we see crossover. So if we have people that are just members on a regular monthly basis and they're at the right stage, they'll want to apply for the program when it comes up. But a lot of times it's people coming from the outside. Maybe the program's the first time they've heard of us. They're really looking for help. It's the right time. They see the opportunity and they apply in.
So when I apply, what do I have to show
for the accelerator program?
For either.
Okay.
So what do I have to show to you that you're going to let me in?
Right. Okay. So a big piece is what you're working on. So, right, we want to see the business, the concept, the creative. That could be a website, that could be a portfolio, business plan. There's lots of different ways to show that. And people also have to give us a demonstration of what they're trying to accomplish and why they want to be a part of the program. So that's really helpful for us to identify who we can help and serve best. Somebody comes to us and is like, hey, I'm looking to meet a bunch of new clients and I want to be a part of this so I can sell to them. That's probably not the best fit for us.
Right.
Not that we don't want to help people get customers, but really like people who are in our space get customers and they get business, but it's very organic and it's because they build relationships. So
are each of the people in the program assigned to a specific mentor?
Yes.
Tell us about these mentors. What's their background?
We have awesome mentors that come from all over, generally South Florida. We have some, that are in different places, and COVID kind of expedited the ability to do more mentoring virtually, which I think is really helpful for founders and mentors. Gives them the ability to meet a lot more often, gives them ability just to have access to different types of mentors. So we have mentors from all different backgrounds. Usually for our accelerator, we're pretty strict on the fact that our mentors have to have had a business themselves or have been part of the early stages of a startup. We just want to make sure that the mentors that are coaching our founders actually know what it's like to be in their seat and can really relate to what it is to go from 0 or 0.51 to the next level, because it's very different. It's very different to have to do that than to do a corporate marketing plan.
I like that because so often you see a lot of these programs out there and you look at the mentors and they're great individuals, right? They're sometimes making 6 figures to $1 million or even over $1 million, but they've never been in the shoes of starting their own brand from scratch.
Yeah.
And it's completely different.
It's so different.
Right. And often, people are getting advice, but it's like, it's hard to take those opinions the same way versus that individual who has been in your shoes that has figuring out marketing and a go-to-market strategy, and you have no money,
right?
You're
like nothing.
Everyone's like, there's no pool, coming
Right.
from Microsoft, right, or Amazon, and like, oh well, we'll just put ads on Facebook. It's like we've thought about that, or Google ads. Like these things cost a lot of money, or hire influencers or a spokesperson, right? It's so hard today when it comes to the marketing element of launching a successful business these days. And I think it's so important to get the right mentors. And I
Totally.
think when I look at a lot of incubators, that's actually where they're failing.
Right.
It's like they just take all the applications in and they have a great LinkedIn profile. But I agree with you. I'd rather take, the less successful entrepreneur that did it from scratch, because that advice is so impactful to that young entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, honestly, our mentors are like life coaches alongside being right experts in certain skills.
Yeah.
Because again, when you're in the early stages of entrepreneurship, I mean, it's your entire livelihood on the line. It's every ounce of your being. It's something you're generally really passionate about. Again, you're doing so much with very little. It takes a lot, and so having somebody that understands that's super helpful. And a big piece of that actually came from my first startup experience, where we tried to take so much of what we knew from the corporate world and do that in a startup, and it was like an epic disaster, because it just doesn't translate the same. It's like you just can't expect to be able to do the same things in a startup environment.
When there's Taco Tuesdays, you got to go take advantage down the block, right?
Yeah.
But it's important. And small teams, like, they operate differently than these larger cultures, where there's a lot more HR rules, and you have to be there for a small group, and it just operates completely differently.
So the mentors are all volunteering.
Yes.
And what's the structure of the organization? I mean, you basically are not by yourself.
No.
You have a board. How does this work? How is it structured? Is it a nonprofit?
Yes, good question. We are a 501c3, which usually surprises people. So we are a nonprofit organization. So we have a board of directors, which is made up of all different community leaders. We have a strong amount of entrepreneurs that are represented on that board, which is super helpful. We always want to have people in leadership positions that have or are doing the work themselves. And then we have a team now of 6 people that run the day-to-day. So that is myself. That is a co-founder, Danielle Casey. We have a development person, Monique. We have somebody that does community engagement, Malika. We have somebody that's running more programs, Linda, and we have Blanche who runs our operation. So we just make sure the whole thing runs, and we're supporting all of our founders. And then the mentors come in. That's a big piece.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that volunteer component to make sure, again, when we have 200 founders we're working with, it's hard for a team of 6.
Now you're generating revenue through the programs.
Yeah.
But that can't be all of your revenue. How do you generate revenue?
Right. Yeah. So we actually have a pretty diverse revenue stream as a nonprofit. It's pretty non-traditional. So we do have our memberships, which is a big piece. So the founders are paying to be a part of it. Again, it's very, very minimal, but it's nice. It's an investment kind of in themselves and their business. We have grants. We have government grants. We have private foundation grants. We have business sponsors. So we work with a lot of different corporations, like banks and other groups, right, who understand the importance of small business and startups in the economic development world. And then we have individual donors as well. A lot of people who.
So is a lot of your job fundraising?
A big piece. Yeah. Thankfully, we have Monique, who joined our team last year, who's now doing fundraising as well, which is amazing. I'm so grateful to have another person. And then our board helps with fundraising too.
Can we get more of an idea of yourself, right? Like, tell us, going back to your early days, right? Your entrepreneurial journey, and then, being the executive director, like, what is your day-to-day like, right? Because I think so often we talk about what the business does, but like what Roland was just, touching on is, like, you're out there shaking a lot of hands, right?
yeah.
Because that is the momentum of every business is getting capital, of course, and raising revenues. So kind of go back to your early days for a moment.
Sure.
And then take us to you being the executive director.
Yeah, definitely. So very early days, which I won't spend a lot of time on. I grew up in the corporate world of products with some of the big players, P&G and GE and things like that, which I think was important. And the one piece I learned so much from that was the research they do and just the structures they have and the precision they have on running businesses and launching new products. That was very fun to learn at a young age and see. And again, obviously they have a lot of money to do it, but seeing best practices of how do you actually bring something new to life, even at that size, was pretty amazing. And just the customer discovery they do. I mean, it was incredible to watch, as part of the Gillette team. They literally watch men shaving their faces in a mirror for hours, for weeks at a time, just to understand how many strokes they take and how much water they use and how much shaving cream, which seems so silly, but now in like the world of innovation and bringing different products and ideas to life, like, you have to do that, right? You have to really understand your customers and what they do. So like seeing that at such a large level definitely still impacts me today. So started in that world, actually moved to Florida about 10 years ago, actually almost 11 now, to work for a consumer products company that I would consider a later stage startup. So they were a licensee of really big brands, Black & Decker, Stanley, Caterpillar. They're still around. Was part of that company at the early phase where they were kind of going from a family-run company to a, real like company with people that ran different departments and helped kind of stabilize what they were doing. And so I was part of that from like really early stages, like 100 million of just, getting that company off the ground, getting the products off the ground, launching in different markets, which is very cool. And also gave me a lot of insight into just kind of what it takes to go from such a small size to such a large size, and how challenging that can be from a leadership perspective, how challenging that can be from a team perspective, from a resource perspective. And like a lot of people don't do that well. And I saw a lot of the not so good side of that, and I saw the good side of that. And it really inspired me to be like, hey, I want to do that, and I want to do it kind of differently. And I met my two business partners there, who had been involved in the small business consulting space and had been consulting a lot of companies. That's how they got involved. We decided we just wanted to create our own thing. And, we were excited to do innovative things. And I think we knew we wanted to help business owners and small business owners, and we saw the potential there. So we ended up founding a company called Rooster it's like between 2013, 2014 here in Palm Beach County. We were out at Delray Beach, and really it was technology mixed with education and support for small business owners in the service industry who really were very skilled at what they did and didn't know how to run the business side of things. So from that experience, I did the whole startup gamut of everything here, learning how to do that, learning how to fundraise, right? We raised like $1 million. It was so hard at the time. The investors here didn't even know what a convertible note was. It was like so early for this market, and people were not investing in startups. It was very rare. And so early stages of pitch competitions, it was early stages of everything. I mean, I was generally the woman on the panel, on the tech panels, right? That was like invited because I was like the only one around that was doing something. And so I like had to go to all these events and like speak on technology on behalf of like women, which is funny. I mean, yes, it was nice, but now it's like, thankfully there's a lot more of us around and involved in the startup scene. So did that, learned how to launch technology. We built a really cool app. We had paying customers. We, again, raised funds, did all these things, and like saw and learned how to do that. And also realized, again, one, how hard it was. And two, got very clear on like what the vision was and what we wanted. And like, we definitely didn't all have the same view of that. I think I learned very quickly that like running a business where I was involved in like fixing an app on a day-to-day basis was not my favorite thing to do.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Right?
Yeah,
Some people love it.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to be out in the world and like working with people.
Not
and
what you asked
helping
for, right? A
these
cool piece of technology.
businesses. Exactly.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it's a lot harder than I realized. Then with Apple and Google and customers all the
managing
time.
developers and customer service of it and all those things. And I always think like that's really important for entrepreneurs to know is like, what do you want to do on a day-to-day basis? And I'm going to get to what I do now because it's like way more in line. But at that time too, I was like, I want to do more of the education. I want to be with people more. And to be honest, that was a really hard conversation to have with investors.
Yeah.
Because they don't, I mean, not always. And at the time that was very faux pas. It was like, don't talk to people. Don't have a phone number on your website. Like, don't build community. Like at that time, community was like not a good thing. Nobody thought it could scale. There's all kinds of issues with it, which is funny now because I think a lot of people teach founders to build community and then launch technology.
Yeah.
That's like very common now. And
it's almost saturated, like
right?
Community. Yeah,
community, right? When I was saying it, people were like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Don't do that, right? Like humans, don't interact with them. Do whatever you can to just use technology. So, I had to learn a lot about myself in that process, what I wanted to do as a founder and what, again, made sense for me on a day-to-day basis. And it was really interesting because right as that time, as I was going through that, I was connected to the other people in 1909 that were launching it and had also been founders and were also building companies in this market and also wanted resources and something different. It was just very serendipitous to like be and an environment and be around people that were like, hey, we want to create a community. We want to create a physical space. We want to do education. We want to create this place to support founders in a totally unique and different way. And, I was just really lucky to like be part of that, in the very early stages, and then be able to start developing programming, and then, became the executive director, and here I am.
And then what happened to the old company?
So the old company we ended up shutting down.
Okay.
So unfortunately, but it's common, right? I mean, happens all the time. I think, we couldn't agree as co-founders what we wanted to do.
Mhm.
We wanted to take it kind of different places. We knew we needed more funding. There was no way we were going to be able to raise more funding if we couldn't all agree on what we wanted to do with it. So that's important. I remember we made it to the finals of Techstars in Atlanta. We were like the top 10 out of 6 they would pick. And they were just talking to us in a room about what we wanted to do. And they're like, you guys got to figure it out, do you agree? And we couldn't. And so I think that was a big moment for us.
Can you tell us more about that moment? Because not often do we, our entrepreneurs, really kind of share the truth behind that moment.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like you had a moment with your partners, and it was like, we're shutting the doors. It's over. We're sending out that email. Like the app's closing down, and I'm going on this new journey with 1909. Like, did you think were you depressed, during that month? Like, can you kind of just share? Because I think that's what an audience needs to hear, because often people, fear that they can't possibly let their customers down. But the truth is, like, those customers are gone. Next day, they're like, okay, see you later. Right. Like this big community you thought you had is like, they move on quicker than you realize. But like, tell our audience what it was really like.
So I'd say the moment was really like 6 months, right, of decision making. I want to be really honest with that. It was really difficult, super heartbreaking. There were a lot of moments. There were a lot of things that led to that. There was a lot of tries to see what we could do to reorient things. There was a lot of conversations as whether one of us was going to just take it and run in our own direction. Would we be willing to do that? Would we be willing to buy one another out? What did our investors want? It was heartbreaking. I mean, it really was, because we had a functioning business that was making money, to be honest. So it was like you always, again, as a founder too, you want to hold on to the potential you see, right? And know what you've built, and you usually love what you built. So that was, I think, the hardest part, was like, we knew that there was something that was working, but again, just knowing that like we could not agree to what was next. We weren't going to be able to do that without fundraising. And I mean, we had been fundraising for years.
It's tiring, right? Fundraising
is exhausting. It was so hard. And it's hard when you know exactly where you're going and have a very clear vision and direction. It's almost impossible when you don't. And that's a lot of times, right, when you're like desperate for that money and you just need it. And I think we just weren't willing to go take other people's money without having that clarity and without knowing exactly what we wanted to do. And I mean, there was a lot of hard conversations. I mean, we were all such close friends too, which was hard, because disagreeing with people's hard. And I think, a lot of founders come to that too, is when you first start a company, you have a vision, and then as you build it, the company changes and the world changes and customers change and external factors change, and you learn a lot. And so it can be really, really challenging to stick with that one thing for the lifetime of the business. And really coming to grips with that and saying, like, is this what we really set out to do?
Sure.
And I think that's probably what, at least was my clarity, was really looking deep inside myself and being like, is this really what I want to do? Like, if I could take this and move in this direction, now that I know all the things that I know, and I've been down this path and I've done this, like, do I want to do that forever? And it was a no.
And I like what you said earlier. What was the question? What was the question you said you asked other entrepreneurs about, like, because you unfolded what it was really like to be in the app space.
Yeah.
And dealing with like updates.
Right. Like, what do you want to do every day?
So like a lot of times people don't see that side. They see, oh, it's just cool to run an app, right? It looks really, really sexy on that side, but they don't see the noise on the other side. So what was the statement you mentioned earlier?
I think just knowing people, helping people understand, like, what do you want to do every day, and like right, like what
go in reverse.
Yeah, like what makes you most happy? What are you best at? Again, a lot of people, you look at these big companies that look so glamorous, but it's like, what does that mean? Like, do you want to manage 20,000 people? Yeah. Some people want to do that. A lot of people don't, to be honest. Like, I ask that question to a lot of people, and they're like, that sounds terrible.
They do, but they don't really see what is coming their way.
Right.
Exactly. You want to, be like Mark Zuckerberg and you have to go to Congress and, you know,
Right.
and turn around and, you know, you have families crying, right? Like there's a
Right.
lot more that goes into this stuff
Yeah.
behind the scenes. And I
Totally.
think we see all the highlights on social media from a lot of these mobile apps because those are the
Mhm.
ones that become unicorns often. But it's a very stressful lifestyle.
It
And
is
then
very.
and then when you look at the boring businesses, which
Mhm.
will be the ones, you know, that most, you know, kids in their 20s don't want to operate, like the plumbing business, you know, the the roofing company that's cleaning your roofs. So, you know, I get a fine
Mhm.
every 6 months and someone's got to come out.
Yeah.
You got to spend $300 to $500 every time. Right. But they operate a lot like the other businesses. They all have websites, they all have marketing budgets, they all have employees, and it could be a great lifestyle business.
Right.
And often people don't want to get into them because they see other entrepreneurs operating these unicorns and think that I got to do $1 billion business, you know, which are few and far between, of course.
Yeah.
And it comes back to what you were saying. It's like, what do you really want to do day in and day out?
Right.
You really want to work 14-hour days. You want to wake up one morning and see that your app is down and you got hundreds of comments on social media, and then you got to be reaching out to developers, and you got to leave, you know, that resort you're at and step away, right?
Yeah.
And deal with putting out a fire, right?
Right.
All businesses you have to put out fires, but I know exactly what you're saying. It's like people, you know,
Yeah.
think that's what they want and they find out later in life it's not, of course.
Right. And I think that's part of that journey, right? And again, that's part of what my journey was like really discovering that and being willing to accept it, which was actually like so important because now I get to do what I love to do every single day. Like I absolutely love. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Nice.
I love it so much. It's so rewarding. I love working with the founders at 909. I love working with our team. I feel like I get to be a part of hundreds of companies doing cool things, not just one, which was mine, and like helping them develop and being a smart piece of their journey. And it's like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I love it so much. And like, I think part of my journey of learning what I didn't want to do every day really helped me kind of find my space here.
Nice. We're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump into our newest segment, What's Hot?
Join the fastest growing community of professionals on the internet with OWL. Access new networks and otherwise unreachable professional contacts through the one-on-one call feature on the app. Scroll through the list of available professionals and join them for a quick call to build rich connections, expand invaluable relationships, and to broaden your professional landscape without needing lofty referrals. OWL. We bring vetted pros to your doorstep 24/7 on demand. Join our community by signing up at owl.com today.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. If you're listening on audio only, we are now streaming live at Shrimp Tank Boca on Instagram, as well as my LinkedIn account, Jason R. Hill, as well as our YouTube account. Okay, Shana, on this segment of the show, it's called What is Hot?
Okay.
Right, so we're going to bring up a topic and dive into what is hot, of course, based on your knowledge.
Oh,
So
okay.
let's say, you know, when it comes to mobile apps, let's just go right after it, right? Obviously, I operate one. You know, a lot of people are building communities around mobile apps, but what are the hottest type of mobile apps that you see being invented right now?
Oh, interesting question. Okay, I'll answer in a few ways. I see a lot of fintech apps coming to the market, right? A lot of ways for people to manage, spend, invest, play around with their money differently. Obviously, Venmo kind of set us up for that, but I think it's really interesting. I think people have a lot more access and knowledge and understanding of their finances, and apps are becoming a huge piece of that.
I would agree. I think you don't need to go to Chase or Citibank anymore, or Wells Fargo. More things are right at your fingertips. And
Yeah, it's
see apps
changing
like
the
Charles
business
Schwab, you see
models,
Fidelity
right,
and
of banking
investing,
and
you know.
investment, and it's like people now just have so much more power to do their own thing. So it's going to be really interesting. I think to see where that goes and like where all those big players end up, because a lot of them then are adopting these new technologies, right? It's like now all those banks have Zelle and everything else, which is essentially Venmo, right? It's like, so they're just like adapting to consumer technologies that are being
The
launched.
financial service must have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You start going down the Fortune 500 list and you're like, oh
Right.
my God, it's either an insurance company, right, or a
Yeah.
financial service company. And there's so many of them, and they have large budgets, of course, and they'd rather buy the technology than invent it themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, we see this with PayPal, Venmo, and there's so many out there,
Right.
especially the trading platforms these days, buying, little
Mm-hmm.
fractions of stocks or more community-based investing even.
Right.
But there's so many. Absolutely.
And I would say too, just no code apps.
Yeah.
Right now, that's the biggest thing, which is, I think, good a lot of times for entrepreneurs, not having to spend as much money to build out an app and test it. We see most apps now being built with no code technology.
So I got to ask this: out of the 16 companies that recently joined, how many of them are apps?
Not many.
Okay, so you go the other direction. Not
Maybe
many.
like 5. One, I would say 2. A lot of companies now, I think, are building more just like mobile friendly
Mobile-friendly, yep.
technology, because I think they're seeing the people are getting a little exhausted of downloading apps. So I think we're seeing that shift as well, of people saying, like, maybe I'm going to build it. It's going to feel like an app, but it's not going to be an app. So how do I use web, and technology to support this business, but maybe I'm not going to build it as an app.
I would advise everyone to start with mobile friendly if it could be.
Yeah.
Right. Owl had to be an app because
Mhm.
it had to integrate phone calls.
Yeah.
So it couldn't be a website, of course. But too often people just think, oh, I need an app, but it's their own ego getting in the way.
Right.
And they don't
Yeah.
really need it. And apps are so hard to maintain. The amount of developers you need once it scales, and developers are people. You got to pay them a lot of money. Right. Just
Yeah.
because you're like, oh, I'll find someone overseas, is like, okay, overseas could be $3,000, $12,000 per month per person.
Right.
And often people are not just adding up, like, how much does 5 developers cost? And they're like, 5 times 10,000 a month.
Yeah, that's
Right. That's $50,000 a month.
Yeah.
And you need a business that could generate that much profit,
Mhm.
to pay for those costs, plus your other staff to market the app. And
Right.
you're correct. Like, just to get people to the app store, there's
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people that know about Owl.
Mhm.
Right. But they're like, oh yeah, it looks really cool. I'm like, but did you go to the app store? Like, oh no, I haven't gone there yet.
Right.
Right. So it's like, that doesn't do us any benefit. Or they'll download the app and be like, oh yeah, I have Owl. And they'll literally show it to me. I'm like, but you didn't actually like start an account.
Right.
So they actually took the journey to download it, but they didn't take the journey to register.
Yep.
And again, doesn't do us any benefits. Where a website, they just pop on there and they're already there.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
there could be a call to action and they could buy something right off a site. So
Yeah.
completely agree, because I think too often, people are just not calculating the true costs behind the scenes to operate the apps, and a lot of them are going through the accelerators.
Mhm.
And I always say proceed with caution,
Yeah.
because they think they'll invent it
Mhm.
and then sell it to an investor, and the investors are looking like another app.
Right.
Right. These things
Yeah.
fail 99% of the time. Right. And they see the data
Right.
behind the scenes, and lots of times the early entrepreneur just thinks like, no, but mine's different.
Right.
Mine's solving such a big problem. I go, it's solving a problem, but good luck. No one's going to go out there and download the app typically.
Right.
So
And a
that's
lot
the
of
bigger issue.
times, again, there's ways mobile friendly, technology feels the same. It looks the same. A lot of times now can do the same. Again, unless you have a closed community, which I get,
Yeah.
you can't really do the same way. But if you can, I think it's the way better way to test things, build user base, create a company, is if you just do mobile friendly.
Well, 2 of the 4 finalists in the youth competition were focusing on apps.
Yeah.
And they're 12 years old. And for some reason, when Jason brings up Al, I think he's trying to shame me to take a phone call. But anyway,
Do it. You call Shannon next week. She'll be the
Yeah.
feature
I want
expert.
We'll just
tell
talk to
me.
each other.
Well, I mean, he wants me to answer one.
You could do it. You could do it.
I know.
See?
I'll try. I'll try.
Gotta share that knowledge with the world.
Tell me, you came into this 6 years ago.
Mhm.
What was hot then,
Hmm.
and what is no longer hot, and what has stayed hot, and what has become hot? You got all that?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's such a good question. Whew. Okay. What was hot then? I think it was the tail end of being hot, but I think for a really long time, all the double-sided marketplaces were really hot. Right? The Uber for this was hot.
Mhm.
Right? The Airbnb for this was
Mhm.
hot. I still think that exists and people have to be much better at it. And you see,
But some of the companies
lot more
coming into
focus.
1909 were trying to do that.
oh yeah, in
Okay.
all the industries, right? It's like
Uh-huh,
that was a
okay.
big pitch.
Right.
And
Pet
for the
walking.
Uber for this.
Right.
Right.
Dog walking.
That was
Yeah.
the big thing. Which again is really interesting. And when you
Mhm.
get those models right, I mean, man, it's excellent. And it really solves a lot of problems and you can do really well. It's
Mhm.
very, very challenging. That was the world I was in. And again, that was kind of the time, right? It was a lot of people were doing that and trying to figure out how do you become the connector of, a group of people that do something and can sell their service to somebody else and take a fee. So that was really hot. That's definitely faded. I think a lot of people have tried that and it's become really challenging. And again, a few players have done really well. So, some of the interesting things that I've seen over time now are, and which I love to see, are the companies that were working in spaces that didn't feel hot and now are pretty hot. So, one of our companies I can think of that was in one of our first accelerators was built a technology and like a data aggregator for large companies and municipalities to track their carbon emissions. And at the time it was a nice to have. Right. And it was kind of one of those things. It was like, cool. That's nice. That sounds really pretty and like fluffy, but like who really wants to do that? All these things. Well, now there's regulation in place. Now there's all kinds of requirements for tracking those metrics. And I mean, they were ready, right? They were ready to do it and had the technology and knew, and because they were so deep in that industry and in that field, they saw what was coming. And so that has been so fun to see. And now there's a lot of that, right? It's a lot more of the data tracking and metrics around sustainability. We've seen a little bit of that in AI as well, where we had some people that were in the early stages of that. And obviously that's blown up and there's a good and bad of that. But I think the people who've really been working on it and building it have some really solid technology and ideas because they had to do it early. And so I've seen some waves of that as well, which is super interesting to see.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to our plea, the fifth segment of the show.
Step into our state-of-the-art innovation lab and create your digital future. Oz uses cutting-edge technology and 22 years of industry knowledge to enhance customer experience through digital innovation in a variety of expertise. Oz is a leading global consulting company whose services and solutions are trusted by startup, midsize, and even Fortune 500 companies. Get to know more about Oz's Salus, a mobile solution bringing us back to max capacity, and their latest solution, Rainmaker, saving insurance companies years of work. To learn more about Oz and their exciting technologies, visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Okay, Shane, on this segment of the show, it is called Plead the Fifth. We're going to ask you a question. If you don't want to answer the question, just say, I plead the fifth, but you could only do that one time.
Oh, geez.
Okay. So, which is the worst idea that you heard from today's pitch competition or plead the fifth? You heard it and you're like, oh, like they should not do this. It's not the direction they should go. It could be a mobile app. We were just talking about that earlier. It could be a marketplace.
Okay.
Right?
I'm not going to say the name of the company, but what I will say is I heard a pitch today that felt like the Theranos company, right?
Ooh,
if you guys remember.
Bunch of bullshit. You're like,
the
they can't invent this.
medical,
Yes.
Where she's in jail?
Yeah, where
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
like so
Far-fetched.
good, and you like want it so badly to happen, and you want it to be true, and you want like us to have that solution, but it felt impossible, and like there wasn't enough validation, and it actually terrified me because it was around people's health, and like that we've seen a lot of that. That scares me.
So I guess you want her to name the company or plead the fifth. But let me ask you this.
She told the story.
The most difficult entrepreneur you've ever dealt with, I imagine some of these entrepreneurs come into 1909 and they have terrible social skills and they may not even bathe regularly. Have you ever had instances where you've just had to evict someone because of their behavior and they were affecting others in the 1909 and you had to basically say, we can't do this anymore because you're just too much of a disruption? So name the person and we'll go from there.
God, okay, I can't
He's
name
going
the
hard.
person.
Well, then you have to plead the
Hard
fifth.
Plead the fifth, but I can share about the experience.
Yeah,
All right, we'll
with it.
share. That's
Tell us.
Okay.
We only have limited time here.
So, yeah, I know I would never name the person, super confidential, but I will say that does happen, and like curating a community that's strong and provides value is challenging, and there are people that disrupt that. There are people that disrupt that. Generally, the biggest time is when there's an ethical question of whether or not they're doing things either in their business or with others within the community. Maybe they've said they were going to pay somebody for something, or they hired somebody, there was like a bad interaction there. Like we try really hard to clean that up.
If people come to your location to try to collect from some of the clients, and
Or again, they get into a deal and they do something that's not right, and then there's a big money conflict or something like that, and we have to clean those things up pretty quickly because that can be really disruptive.
and you pled the fifth on who that was, so that's
Okay, yeah.
so ask her a tough one now.
Okay.
Well, the tough one is just, Shana, where can people find you?
Oh, that's a good one.
Of course, people in our audience
Yeah.
might want to join the accelerator. They might just want to check it out, take a tour.
Yep.
So where's the actual location? What is the website?
Cool. We're based in West Palm. I would say the best way to get a feel for what we do is on Instagram. You can just really visualize everything from images and videos and things like that. You can find us at weare1909 on Instagram. And then on our website, weare1909.org, that's where you would go to apply and to really get a more detailed information on our programs.
Nice. Everybody listening, we'll be back next Wednesday right around 1:00. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win.